So I want to spend this reading reflection looking at the story of Michael, who was mentioned he was mentioned in the article. It was just a chapter. It's called chapter number 5. Michael, I get into so much trouble just by walking. And Michael, a little bit about him. He is a student of color who is, we kind of learned in the article, he is wrongly labeled as learning deficient. And he's in the special education program, and he can't simply find a way out. And he's in there because of the process of like positioning and labeling a student. And he talks about this label in his narrative. He says that it could be changed, it being the label. And this is on 138. If it was changed, it would just be another title. I think they should get rid of the title in general, because even if you change it, it's still going to be like, say if you changed special ed into mentally challenged, it's still the same thing. It's still special ed. And so we're kind of talking about how this label is really irrelevant, and it's still just another way of othering, which is a topic that Hart et al., I believe this is 2010, Hart et al. 2010 discusses this, how it's just another term to otherize this group of students. They discuss that on 148. And Michael goes on in his narrative on page 139 to talk about how I say they should keep on giving those placement exams and all that stuff, the exams that show you have a learning disability. But instead, instead of saying he has a learning disability, say, well, he's weak in math and English, and those are his two weak subjects, or he's real strong in science, instead of saying he has a learning disability. That's basically saying you're not good at any subject at all. And that kind of, how that label just is supposed to fully encapsulate what you are, is present in the article. Discursive positioning in the 5th grade writing lesson, The Making of a Bad Bad Boy. It's the Kathleen Collins article from 2011, which she talks about on page 744, she discusses the term positioning replaces the concept of roles in traditional discourse studies. Imagine, for example, a conversation between two people. Traditionally, the participants are called the speaker and the listener. That is, they are identified by their roles. As long as we are only interested in the basic framework of the conversation, who said what to whom, the labels will suffice. So essentially, and she goes on to talk about how in classroom discourse, we have a limiting analysis of what the teacher and the student are responsible for, and how, in like the case of Michael, because he was labeled as learning deficient, it was only expected of him that he would be able to maintain the bare minimum, which he talks about in his article, how he will get like 90s and 100s in his special education class, but he'll never be fully placed back into general or regular education. To kind of combat this, the Ware article, written in 2006, which talks about the warm demander, provides us a way of trying to fix what has already happened to Michael. And it does this in two ways. It does it through the idea of creating a authority figure, as well as a caregiver figure. Through the authority figure, you can set high standards for your students in a no-nonsense kind of way. But because you have those high standards, you need that other figure, the caregiver figure, to raise up and have high support for those high standards. This has impacted my pedagogical philosophy in that I need to be aware of the positions that I'm giving, which Collins discusses. I need to understand the kind of effect that will have on a student, which is something that Hart et al. Discusses, as well as Michael himself in his narrative. He discusses how he started to disengage because he didn't feel like he was being tried enough. He didn't feel like his position where he was placed was fair to him. And so I need to be aware of the things that are going on, and I need to be prepared to be a warm demander in my classroom to where I can set those high expectations for my students to succeed. But I need to be aware that those expectations will only succeed if I provide a high level of support as a caregiver.